Sadiq Khan, thanks for joining me on UpFront. We've seen all sorts of reports about stock market crashes, currency crises, impending recession. The former Labour Finance Minister Alistair Darling said this week that he's more scared now than he was during the financial crash in 2008. Has the economic fallout from the Brexit vote been even worse than you would imagined, and how bad will it get?
Can I just say this? Look, we have always been a city that is open-minded, that is outward-looking, that is a global city, and clearly I'm disappointed that the British public voted to leave the European Union. What's clear to me now is that we need to have access to a single market of 500 million customers, one set of rules, and what's important is when it comes to the renegotiation with the EU, that the next Prime Minister, the next government ensures we have access to a single market. And I've been speaking to employers and businesses non-stop since Friday, reassuring them, reassuring investors that we're not going to stop being open-minded and outward-looking. We're not going to stop having creative people, innovative people, intelligent people here in London. But you're right, there is a challenge for us as a city now that we're going to be outside the European Union.
You want London and you want the UK to be part of the single market. The single market, of course, requires freedom of movement. The President of the European Council this week said it's a core principle. You can't have a single market a la carte. Do you agree with that view, that there's going to be free movement as part of single market membership?
I think one of the things you've got to recognise, if you look at those countries outside of the EU that have got access to the single market, think of Norway, think of Switzerland. One of the quid pro quos is access, free movement if you want to have access to the single market. And so the job of the next Prime Minister is to firstly make sure it's clear that we want to have access to a single market, then negotiate the terms. But you're right, the presidents are, that to have access to a single market, you need to give free movement of people across Europe. And the deal that the next Prime Minister's got to do is to square the circle, because the Leave campaign gave the impression you can have your cake and eat it. You can have access to the single market and not have free movement. That's the job they're going to have to do. That's one of the reasons why David Cameron quit.
Why did 52% of Britons, why did a majority of your fellow Britons vote to leave the EU? Why did they ignore the warnings from all the economists and experts about catastrophe, etc.? Why do you think they won?
There's a number of explanations. My explanation is the frustrations, the anxieties that people have. They can't get access to a decent school. They're waiting too long to see a GP or a specialist to be treated in the NHS. They can't get homes for their sons and daughters or nephews and nieces. All the grievances people may have had, the blame was put on the European Union. The blame was put on immigration. The blame was put on the other. And I'm afraid during the campaign, a number of the promises made by the Leave team were ones that the public believed. I'm not blaming the public. And the challenge for the Leave campaign team is now to square that circle.
On the Leave campaign team, are they responsible? Is the rhetoric deployed by the Leave campaign responsible for this rather shocking rise that we've seen in racist, xenophobic attacks towards East Europeans, Muslims, ethnic minorities since the referendum result? You've called for the police to be extra vigilant about this rise in racism, but what's behind it? Is it people like Boris Johnson, your predecessor, scaremongering about Turkish migrants and foreign terrorists during the campaign?
I mean, just to reassure viewers of yours from outside the UK, this is a great country. This is the best country in the world as far as I'm concerned. I would say that I'm British. London is the greatest city in the world. We don't simply tolerate difference. We respect it, we embrace it, we celebrate it. You can't escape the fact that the campaign was horrible. There was a poster used by the Leave team, a poster of refugees fleeing Syria in fear of their lives, and the words, breaking point. The tactics of fear was used during the Leave campaign, saying Turkey is going to join the EU, giving the impression that there'd be 79 million Turkish people coming to our country. And that's created an atmosphere, I believe, which legitimizes, which says it's okay, it normalizes behaviour that previously we wouldn't normalise. Name calling, criminal damage, graffiti being daubed.
So given you've drawn that line, given you've drawn that direct line, should the likes of Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, the Justice Minister, Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP, these leaders of the Leave campaign, should they now apologise and do more to rein in some of this sentiment?
I said during the campaign, during the great debate that was had the couple of days before the voting, I called them out for this. I said, look, it's okay Boris Johnson on the one hand saying how wonderful immigration is, But he can't then, on the other hand, be responsible for some of the language used, some of the posters used, some of the tactics used. And I'm afraid those responsible for orchestrating that campaign need to now explain this rise in racial violence, this rise in racial abuse, this rise in racial tension. My job as the mayor is to make sure I keep our city safe. My job as the mayor is to make sure we have zero tolerance towards these incidents. My job as the mayor is to say to minority communities, including Europeans, you are welcome here. I value the contribution you make to our city, the work you do, the taxes you pay. That shouldn't change.
Your election as Mayor of London in May grabbed global headlines. London got a lot of praise around the world for being the first Western capital city to elect a Muslim mayor. The UK was seen as enlightened, tolerant, at ease with diversity. Do you think that's now all been undone by the Brexit vote and the growing nationalism, jingoism and anti-immigrant sentiment we've seen since the referendum result?
No, London is the greatest city in the world. It really is. Where else in the world can you get somebody from humble background, council estate, not simply an ethnic minority, but a religious minority, and not just any old religion, it's the religion of Islam, and we know the current challenges the followers of Islam, us Muslims, have. But also I've been touched by the asylum seekers in London, the refugees, Jews, Christians, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Muslims, who've been moved by our campaign and us winning. And I'm hoping everyone now recognises that the London promise, you work hard, you get a helping hand, you can achieve anything, is one that will go forward to the next generation as well.
A lot of people, both Muslim and non-Muslim, Sadiq Khan, are saying you're now a role model to young Muslims both at home and abroad. Do you feel a lot of pressure when people say that?
I didn't ask to be a role model. I don't hold myself out as a Muslim leader or a Muslim spokesperson. I'm a mayor who happens to be a Muslim. I recognise, though, that I am a role model. I say that with humility, not with arrogance. And that brings with it a responsibility, which I take very, very seriously. I hope I never let down those who hold me up as a role model. I will do my best. That's all I can promise to do.
You are a liberal Muslim. You voted in favour of gay marriage. You've campaigned to keep pubs open in your constituency. Obviously, a lot of Muslims in the UK, more conservative Muslims, don't share those views. They didn't, for example, turn up at the gay pride parade that you spoke at earlier this week. Is there a danger that a lot of non-Muslims now decide that you, as a liberal Muslim, are the only benchmark of what a good Muslim is, a moderate is?
It's really important that we say loudly and clearly we're not one homogenous group. I don't speak for the Islamic faith, either in the country or the city, even for my own family. I speak for myself. And what I try to do as a politician is to be representative of everyone. The phrase we used during the campaign was, I'm going to be a mayor for all Londoners. I meant what I said, I'll be a mayor for all Londoners. That means Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, those not a member of an organised faith. That means black, white, lesbian, gay, rich, poor, old, young. That's the mandate that I've got, and I take it very, very seriously. What we shouldn't do is pigeonhole people according to what one individual does. I would never do that, and nor should others.
When you as a Muslim see members of the public, your fellow Britons, on live TV, proudly saying that they voted to leave the European Union in order to keep Muslims out, how does that make you feel? What's your reaction to that?
It's heartbreaking. I mean, what I say loud and clear is there must be no place for that in a civilised society. We'll have zero tolerance for that. What we need to recognise, though, is it's possible to have what I call multiple identities. You can be British, a European, a Londoner, of Asian origin, of Islamic faith, all these things, a husband, a father, they're not mutually exclusive. And what's important is that we recognise in the 21st century, one of the biggest challenges, but also the biggest opportunities we're going to have is identity. Who are we? That sense of belonging. And what's important is that I reassure people, those who may not meet Muslims, Mehdi, the only knowledge they've got of Islam is what they see in the newspapers or the media. When criminals, when terrorists do bad things, but use the name of Islam to justify their actions, the impression these people may have, because they don't work with Muslims, they don't know Muslims, is that those minority of people speak for Islam. And one of the jobs that I do, because of the position I'm in, is to reassure people that, those minority of people don't speak for the faith of Islam.
How do you beat that Islamophobia that's so prevalent in the press and the media, as you just mentioned? How do you beat that when it seems to be everywhere in the press, in mayoral campaigns, in EU referendum campaigns? How do you stop it?
You do it one person at a time, one newspaper at a time, one media outlet at a time. But Martin Luther King once said, look, We can legislate to change the way people act, but not the way people think. But over a period of time, by changing the way people act, it will change the way people think. Look, my dad and mum, when they first came to London in the 1960s, there were signs up, and you know this from your parents. The sign said what? No blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And by no blacks, they meant anybody that wasn't white. In their lifetime, they saw their children being the victims, me, my brothers and my sister, of racial abuse, getting involved in fights. My daughters, 16 and 14, who live in the same area, have, thank God, never suffered overt racial abuse. My parents' son, my father's passed away, is now the Mayor of London. That's the progress we've made, and I'm an optimist. And so, we've got to make sure we never stand still. If you stand still and are complacent, that leads to problems. We've got to always fight this battle, and I will fight that battle, as will a lot of decent-minded people who aren't ethnic minorities. They're white.
Sadiq Khan, thanks for joining me on UpFront.
It's a pleasure.